body of knowledge and what is going on in every cell inside the body. I mean, it's just literally mind-blowing. And I'm sure that it must have an impact in or hopefully in the trajectory of understanding health, understanding illness, how to treat it, right?
Well,
What's the
no,
implication there?
everything. Uh, I mean, Andy Weil, when he wrote in my book, it's a new paradigm to think of. In other words, it's more complicated, but we know where to look.
Right.
Everyone knows you look for the signaling now.
Yep.
And that's what you do. And that's where the treatments are going to be. And the treatments are manipulating signaling, finding out exactly who's signaling who about what, and how you can join the conversation and alter the. I mean, what cancer does, cancers, are extremely smart cells. They're like super cells, and they take over and they break the pathways that contain normal cells. Like every cell knows their place. They don't go over the edge. You don't build something too big. You don't make scars.
Yeah.
You don't live too long. You cooperate. All the cells have severe limitations that they all cooperate with. Cancer breaks that thing that limits, and therefore develops ways to reproduce endlessly and to not sort of die at the right time and to build. And they build organs. It's not like they build just a bunch of cancer cells. They build a city. And the way they do this is by taking over the signaling of all the other cells around them. So they manipulate the fibroblasts, are the cells that make the connective tissue. They're the ones involved with fascia that are very important. We should talk about one day. That's a very important subject. And so the cancer cells manipulate the fibroblasts. Cancers have immune cells like macrophages living in there. They have cells building, they build their own blood vessels, and they build them in such a way that immune cells that are nasty to them can't get through. So these are all through signaling, and they manipulate, and they know that certain languages, like if it starts somewhere, we know that the lung has a certain kind of community of a language, and the brain has a language. So when they send metastases, which they send out in little like satellites, little vesicles, they fill them with all the stuff you need to start a new colony, and you send out these vesicles, they end up landing. So certain cancers go to the brain, certain go to the bone. And they do that because their dialect is the same as the bone. And when they land, when their vesicle lands in the bone, it'll know how to talk to the fibroblasts and start manipulating and start building a colony and a structure there. So the cancer chapter is very interesting because these are like highly intelligent, of all the cells, and the only cells that can match them are T cells, really, that go after them. But T cells are used to fighting bacteria and viruses. They're used to getting an army of one kind of cell and going after that. The problem with cancer is that it's based upon different mutations. And so they have all kinds of subsets. They're like sub creatures. Cancer is really like a city with many different neighborhoods, and each one has a different mutation and is creating a different clone. And you need a T cell for each one. That's why it's so hard. And so they manufacture T cells with a particular gene that can go after the subset. But if you don't get every single subset, the cancer won't go away. So that's why it's so tricky. Anyway, I can blab on, blabbing
No,
on.
no, that's mind blowing to think of it in those terms. I mean, it's almost like, cancer is the fake news propaganda that
Yes, exactly.
influences the system.
Right.
Uh,
No, they manipulate, they learn the signals of the local cells, the immune cells, the structural cells, the vascular cells. They learn and they then manipulate them. Now, the other thing is, we know that bacteria send signals to each other to defeat antibiotics. And they do this through sending genes, resistance genes. And they can do this through friendly viruses or through joining and sending them in a tube or sending them in vesicles. Cancer cells do the same thing. Cancer cells send signals to each other about how to fight off the medicine that's being used. And they like nanotubes. They like vesicles. They're called exosomes. They like vesicles as a signal, and they like these little tiny nanotubes. They have a lot of them. And so, for example, the way they get big and strong is they change their mitochondria. They make a super mitochondria that's functioning in a different way, and eventually, normally would be killed because the limitations would get rid of it. In the cancer cell, they manipulate the mitochondria to the point where it's wonderful. They multiply this mitochondria, and then they send them to their comrades in these vesicles and in these tubes. They send them along these tubes to their comrades to help them get strong, and then they'll signal how to fight an antibiotic, and they'll talk to the bacteria. In a lot of cancers, there's a lot of bacteria that are friendly to them. Some that are enemies. A lot of cancers start from bacteria and start from viruses, so they have a very love-hate relationship with